Welcome to the seventh and final C in the program, Sail the 7 Seas to Sensational Storytelling. I would never say that one C is much more important than any of the others. Do you have to have all 7 C's to make the story memorable and get people to take action? Probably not, but I found that when you do use all 7, it greatly increases your odds that people will remember you and take action. I say that none is more important than the other, but I got to tell you, the 7th C is the one that makes your story memorable and creates an emotional connection. It is conversation. Another way of saying it is dialogue. One of the biggest challenges I see for most speakers, even some very highly paid professionals, is that they don't bring audiences into their stories through dialogue. They're more like reporters. When you do this, it's more like retelling a story than helping your audience relive it. I have a question for you. In my story about Judy, did you have an emotional reaction to Judy's response? Nearly every time I have shared that story with other people, I get an emotional reaction. Sometimes it's tears, and sometimes people will actually say at the conclusion of that story, "Do you have any life insurance applications? I think I need more life insurance." Now that's not the purpose of that story in most cases, but I get an emotional reaction. I don't think I would get that if I retold the story in a reporter or narration type style. In fact, I know I wouldn't because I've tested it both ways. Now, your story may not be as dramatic as handing a grieving widow a $600,000 check. But I promise you, if you use more dialogue in your stories, it will have a profound impact on how people respond to you and the action they take. So how do you insert conversation into your stories to create this effect? Well, some people have said to me, "Mike, don't I have to become an actor?" Yeah, actually a little bit you do. But here's the thing. If you're not an actor, don't worry about this. The key to conversation, and really this whole program, is you have to tell your stories. The reason you have to tell your stories is because those are the ones you have an emotional connection to. I wish that that story about Judy was not true, because it meant that I lost a friend. She lost a husband. I mean, obviously much more important in her world, but I lost a friend. And I watched another friend, Judy, go through a difficult time. And in my financial planning career, I watched 6 other widows bury their husbands. So believe me, I have feeling about the concept of life insurance and watching widows grieve and go through difficult times. If I read those stories in a book or went to the Chicken Soup for the Soul, they might be good stories and interesting, but I would not have that emotional connection and I would not get the response I get from audiences. And that's why it's so important you tell your stories. Right, I'm off my soapbox. What you do in creating conversations is go back through your story and look for those areas where you're reporting what people said. Find a way to turn that into dialogue. Now, here's what's important. Some people get concerned because they say, "I don't remember what that person said. I don't remember what I said." That's not the key issue here. The key issue is that you get your main point across. Are those words exactly what I said and what Judy said? Probably not. To my recollection they are, but probably not what we said. But here's what's important. It gets the intended impact on the audience. Some folks think, am I being misleading? Am I not being honest with my audience? This is where you take artistic license. Don't worry, I'm not telling you with artistic license to go lie. That story is absolutely true. As I said earlier, I've had 6 other instances in my career where that happened. What you can take, let's say you're in the business of selling cars, and you have stories about different families who've been so thrilled with buying cars from you. You can take the best parts of each story and create one that persuades people on why they should buy from you. Are you lying? No, because you're telling honest feedback and responses that you've gotten from people. So don't worry about that. As long as you're honest about the end result and the impact you've had on people, you're not going to upset anybody, and they're not going to do fact checking on you to say, hey, is this what John and Mary Smith said to you on August 13th, 2012? Not going to happen. So tell real stories and you'll be just fine. But go through your story and look for those areas where you're telling what somebody else said, and instead put it in their words. Be the character. Now, to help you understand the power of this, think back to the dialogue that you heard Judy and me have. This story would have been a lot less impactful if I had stood up and said, the day that my client Judy was sitting in my office was a tough day for her. Her hair was unkempt, she had dark circles under her eyes, and clearly she'd been crying because her eyes were bloodshot. So we started to have a discussion. I found out that she was just really feeling lost. She was so confused and in pain because her husband Jerry had died unexpectedly, and she just didn't know what was going to happen. She was especially concerned financially, and about that time I pulled out a check from the insurance company and handed it to her because she was so concerned about what was going to happen. And at that point, she looked at that check for must have been 2 or 3 minutes. Finally, it dawned on her that things were going to be okay, at least financially. She was still going to grieve over her husband, but she knew that the people who worked for her would be okay. And it really had an impact on me, too, because I realized that insurance is important. Do you get the point? Are the facts of the story correct compared to giving it in dialogue? Yeah. Did you have an emotional reaction to that retelling of the story? My guess is no. And you shouldn't. So when you listen to speakers and storytellers in the future, listen for that dialogue versus monologue. Are they retelling the story or are they reliving it? So you're right there. Your assignment, as I'm sure you've guessed, is to go back into your story, as I've said, and look for opportunities to create conversations, dialogue, where the audience can actually feel what's going on between the characters. Make sure, especially with this step, that you're getting feedback from your audience to say, hey, are you feeling this scene? Can you sense the anger, the hope, the joy, whatever the emotion you're conveying? Is that coming through in the dialogue? Master this part of storytelling, and I promise you, you will leap way ahead of the competition. And people will want to hear you and your stories from now on. That concludes our 7 C's storytelling program. There will be one more video for you, though. It is a pre-launch special that we're doing for my upcoming book called The Book on Storytelling. If you like this 7-video series, you'll probably love this book. There are more details in the next video and some special bonuses because you've taken the time to invest in yourself as far as time. Fortunately, no cost for these videos. You've invested the time to learn this. I trust that you're out testing these ideas and you're finding that your stories are getting better. So take a look at the next video when you see it in your inbox in the next few days. It'll be an opportunity to not only learn to become a better storyteller, but to put more humor into your speeches and your stories. Until then, I hope to see you on stage soon. Because as you know, you have a story that someone needs to hear.